Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the launch of the State of the Youth Report. My name is Adam Van Koeverden. I'm the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth, as well as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Heritage for Sport. And I'm so proud to be joining you today from Milton, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabeg and the Ottawa-Daron, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Thank you so much for joining us here today to announce the release of Canada's first ever State of the Youth Report. Through the State of the Youth Report, youth in Canada were asked to share their views based on the 6 priority areas identified in the youth policy. Those are leadership and impact, health and wellness, innovation, skills and learning, employment, truth and reconciliation, and environment and climate action. These priority areas were developed through engagement sessions with close to 1,000 diverse young people from across the country. They told us what issues mattered most to them. La report présentait un aperçu instantané de ce que les jeunes du Canada pensent des questions qui leur tiennent le plus à cœur. Il a été élaboré à partir de sessions de mobilisation auxquelles ont participé près de 1,000 jeunes de partout au Canada. We're joined today by 3 of the 13 members of the Youth Advisory Group who have contributed their ideas and their time into the creation of the State of the Youth Report. The Youth Advisory Group also came together to interpret the engagement data and draft the State of the Youth 2021, in their own words, portion of the report. I'd now like to introduce my colleague, my friend, Minister Bardish Chagger, the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth. The development of the State of the Youth Report was a part of Minister Chagger's 2019 mandate letter and was a commitment in the Canada's youth policy. So without further ado, my friend and colleague, Minister Chagger, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's been such a wonderful ride to be on with you. And I have to say your leadership has been tremendous, and just your way of engaging and your authenticity is something that we need more of. So I really want to say thank you for helping to create safer, braver spaces and for that introduction. Hello everyone, bonjour. Je me joins à vous de Waterloo en Ontario sur le territoire traditionnel des peuples Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee et Nôtre. Je suis tellement heureuse de lancer avec vous le tout premier État de la jeunesse du Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau often says that youth are not only the leaders of tomorrow, you are the leaders of today. And you deserve to have your voices heard and represented at the decision-making table. And you should get to have a say in the decisions we make that will determine the future of our country. This report was made for youth, with youth, and by youth. And I want to start by thanking every single one of you who worked so hard to bring it to life, and for all the youth across Canada who gave their input. This report is the culmination of the efforts of close to 1,000 young people, as Adam mentioned, from all over Canada, who weighed in on the issues that matter to them, from meaningful engagement in decision-making, access to quality education, mental health supports and job opportunities, environmental justice, and the need for culturally sensitive approaches to truth and reconciliation. Pour la première fois, des jeunes d'origines diverses ont contribué à la rédaction du rapport, y compris des autochtones, des noirs et des autres jeunes racisés, des jeunes LGBTQ2, des jeunes bilingues et polyglottes, et des jeunes qui déclarent avoir des identités croisées. I want to start to say with a huge thank you to all involved. And I want to give a special shout out to the 13 outstanding Youth Advisory Group members who put their hands up to help shape this landmark report. Our appreciation to Jake Bradshaw, Alfred Burgeson, Alex Daigle, Carson Robinson, Gloria Livingston, Jamie Lee Keith, Jenna Jundal Alrife, Katya Newman, Keely Grossman, Manvir Bungu, Sharon Keela, Simone Theriot, et Taylor Benz-Koza. Many young people, including youth on the advisory group and youth virtually with us today, face racism, discrimination, and intolerance. I've heard directly from youth say that they don't always have access to the resources and supports they need to live their most authentic lives and reach their full potential. Our government knows this needs to change, but I also know that youth have all the tremendous aspirations. You are full of passion and creativity. You're articulate and engaged. You're hardworking and determined. You have innovative ideas to build a more compassionate, more equitable, and more consciously inclusive Canada. What I know for sure is that whenever I meet young Canadians, I'm always impressed. I'm always energized by all you have to offer. You are resilient. How you've handled these long months of lockdowns and restrictions with compassion and grace, even as you have struggled, is a testament to that, especially as you've also been dealing with the grief and anger of the Wet'suwet'en protests, the findings of hundreds of unmarked burial sites on former residential school grounds, and the increase in hatred and racism during the pandemic. Vous êtes courageux. Vous n'avez pas peur de vous battre pour ce que vous pensez être juste et de vous mettre en danger. You are true to yourselves. You are brave and vulnerable enough to share your unique identities and life experiences. And you, very rightly, want to be part of decisions that affect your lives. We have a lot to learn from you, and that is why Prime Minister Justin Trudeau often talks about youth as leaders of today and tomorrow. This report is a starting point. It gives us a snapshot into the hearts and minds of young people in Canada on issues that matter to you. It tells us how you are doing right now. It gives us a path forward by providing 28 recommendations for concrete action. Cet excellent outil nous permettra de continuer à vous écouter, à vous rendre hommage et à réfléchir aux réalités qui vous touchent, et ce, avec authenticité. And we will be repeating the process every 4 years so that we can keep up to date with how young people are doing, find out what you need, and continue to learn from you and to work with you and for you. En ce moment, nous entendons dire que vous voulez des données plus pertinentes et opportunes accès sur les jeunes. Vous voulez des moyens significatifs, durables et accessibles de vous engager. Et vous voulez des actions sur les questions qui vous importent. I promise you that my colleagues in government and I are listening. Dans les mois à venir, nous prendrons des mesures concernant les questions soulevées par les jeunes au Canada. In the coming months, we will be taking action on the issues raised by youth in Canada, because we know that when youth have meaningful opportunities to participate in decision-making, policies and programs are simply better. We know that when we empower youth to have a say in our communities, our institutions, and our country, we are building a better and consciously more inclusive Canada. So let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep taking action. Let's keep working together. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Adam, back to you.
Thank you, Minister Chagger. It's so good to see you. Looking forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. It's been a long Zoom year for all of us, but this certainly has been a great opportunity to be together from coast to coast to coast today. It's now my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Alfred Burgesson, to the co-chair of the Youth Advisory Group to share a few words. Over to you, Alfred.
Awesome. Thank you, Parliamentary Secretary Van Koeverden and Mr. Chagger for that awesome welcome. I'm joining you all from Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax, in the land of Mi'kma'ki. So I was co-chair alongside Jake for the State of Youth Report and had a pleasure of working with the other advisory group members. It's incredible that we're finally here and we're super excited to present the State of the Youth Report to everyone. I'm going to spend a little bit of time covering two sections of this report and break down some of what we heard. But this report will be online and available to folks joining. So under the health and wellness domain, we had different themes that youth spoke to. And so, it was recognized that this was a hard year for everyone. However, folks who are marginalized don't have access to healthcare. Equity and social determinants is a huge thing to explore, and mental health education is also something that youth want to focus on. Underneath the recommendations for health and wellness, folks want health and wellness education to youth and to educators as well. Folks want to address the systemic and equity issues within the health and healthcare system. And folks want to recognize the effect that COVID has had on youth and want to put attention to programs that will allow youth to heal, truthfully, from the year we just had. Under innovation, skills, and learning is another domain in this report. And underneath that, youth talk about access to technology, education, so alternative and experiential learning opportunities for youth in today's world. Folks talk about equity, so who is involved in innovation in our country and skills, and who's leading it, who's designing it. Folks talk about mental health impact. And then in terms of skills, youth who are not enrolled in education are also interested in looking for ways to develop their skills, perhaps outside of traditional educational institutions. I can also say that there was quite a bit of emphasis on sort of having youth. I mentioned experiential learning, so having work integrated learning opportunities where youth can maybe start an enterprise or lead a community project and find ways to get credit for it, and to also earn money or pursue employment at the same time. So those are the two sections, just to give you a taste. Jake and Alex are going to share some more, but I will leave my time with a quote from a cohort 3 member of the Youth Council, Hoban, a good friend of mine. She recently made a tweet about youth in Canada that ended up getting over 90,000 likes and 20,000 retweets, and I think it's quite relevant for this conversation. And so Hoban's tweet said, check in on 18 to 25-year-olds in your life. From working and researching youth employment during this pandemic, I've noticed that finding a place in the adult world is so difficult. The pressure of the early 20s, quarter life crisis, plus post-grad anxiety is real. The youth are going through it. So 95,000 likes, 20,000 retweets. So having this conversation about the state of youth is definitely timely, and I'm so glad we're finally here to present it to you all and to get folks attention on the state of youth in our country. And back to you, Adam.
Merci Alfred, merci pour d'avoir partagé votre expérience avec nous, et merci encore pour partager le tweet de Habon, nos amis. She is poignant and amazing, and I follow her and retweeted that as well, I believe. J'aimerais maintenant inviter et présenter Alex Daigle, membre du groupe consultatif de jeunes, à partager quelques mots. Alex, la parole à vous.
Merci beaucoup, et merci à la ministre Chagger, et merci à vous, secrétaire parlementaire à Koeverden, et un grand merci à tous les membres du groupe jeunesse consultatif qui ont participé à l'écriture du rapport avec moi. Ça a vraiment été une expérience incroyable. Et honnêtement, ce fut vraiment un honneur de participer à l'écriture du rapport au nom des centaines de jeunes consultés, presque 1000 jeunes. Et je suis heureuse de vous partager plus de contexte sur les sections environnement et action climatique et leadership et impact. Alors, dans la section leadership et impact du rapport, les répondants insistent beaucoup sur l'accessibilité d'opportunités qui sont accessibles, donc des opportunités qui ne sont pas limitées aux personnes avec un certain degré d'éducation ou d'expérience antérieure. C'est vraiment important de reconnaître les différents types d'expériences vécues, les différents types de leadership qui existent. Par exemple, les personnes qui sont des leaders locaux dans leur propre communauté, qui ne sont pas des leaders à grande échelle. Bon, ce leadership-là doit être reconnu et ces opportunités-là doivent être disponibles pour ces personnes-là qui ont des impacts dans leur communauté et ils doivent être reconnus également. Un autre point très important sur les répondants, c'est sur les opportunités de leadership qui sont actuellement non rémunérées, qui ne sont pas accessibles pour les personnes à faible revenu, qui n'ont pas les moyens de donner leur temps bénévolement, qui limitent vraiment leurs accès à certaines occasions. Les occasions de leadership à tout niveau devraient être rémunérées et devraient être équitables pour que les rôles de leadership reflètent réellement la diversité des populations distantes au Canada. Les jeunes insistent aussi que les outils pour avoir accès aux opportunités devraient aussi être disponibles et accessibles. Alors, on parle d'accès à Internet, d'accès à des téléphones cellulaires, des plans de téléphones cellulaires qui sont abordables, et ça, peu importe où est-ce qu'ils se trouvent au pays, pour que ce soit réellement équitable, que les gens peuvent réellement avoir accès à des opportunités de leadership accessibles. Parlons maintenant de la section environnement et action climatique. Alors, les jeunes cherchent des actions importantes et concrètes dans le domaine de l'environnement et de l'action climatique de la part du gouvernement fédéral. Une première recommandation du rapport touche la mise en place de politiques de transition équitable ou Just Transition, afin de mettre en place des politiques environnementales équitables qui visent la réforme des industries polluantes comme l'industrie pétrolière, l'industrie des combustibles fossiles, vers des emplois verts. De plus, on parle de l'importance de l'accessibilité et de la reconnaissance du privilège actuel dans le domaine de l'environnement parce que c'est crucial. On parle par exemple du privilège d'être dans un endroit qui est moins touché par les changements climatiques. Il faut aussi reconnaître que les communautés marginalisées sont souvent ceux qui ressentent le plus les effets du changement climatique. Et c'est pour ça qu'on recommande fortement la promotion de la souveraineté autochtone dans notre rapport. C'est une de nos recommandations dans cette section-là. Ces communautés peuvent et devraient pouvoir décider comment intégrer leurs pratiques et leur culture dans la gestion de leur propre territoire. Finalement, c'est aussi crucial d'offrir aux communautés des opportunités de mettre en place des projets environnementaux dans leur région qui font la promotion de l'éducation et de la collaboration. Alors, on parle de projets de centrales solaires pour la communauté ou encore de centres de compost communautaires. Alors, ce sera des subventions, des opportunités disponibles pour ces communautés-là qui cherchent à mettre en place des beaux projets communautaires. Nous devons travailler ensemble pour limiter les impacts de la crise climatique qu'on voit actuellement et le gouvernement doit prendre des décisions pour le bien-être de la population et non au bénéfice des entreprises. Merci beaucoup encore une fois. Ça a vraiment été un honneur de participer à l'écriture de ce rapport-là. Et c'est vraiment juste un contexte des deux sections, mais j'encourage vraiment tout le monde à aller lire tout le rapport parce qu'il y a vraiment des recommandations exceptionnelles de la part du groupe. Et de retour à vous au secrétaire parlementaire.
Merci beaucoup, Alex. C'est toujours très inspirant d'entendre des jeunes qui font un travail incroyable dans leur communauté. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. I'd like to now invite Jake Bradshaw, the other co-chair of the Youth Advisor Group, to share his reflections. Over to you, Jake.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here, calling in today from Toronto, which resides on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. Today, I'm going to be talking about the employment section as well as the truth and reconciliation section. In the employment section, there were three main findings that we heard from young people. First, increasing cost of tuition and the rising cost of living has caused financial strain and pressure on young people. Second, there aren't enough jobs that exist today to meet the demand of young people who are entering the workforce. And third, young people are struggling to find jobs. They don't know where to look for these jobs, and there's inequitable access to job opportunities. Our main recommendation in this section was to create an employment guarantee for young people that meet certain criteria and creating a centralized hub where these opportunities could live. One of the things that excited me about this section was to see a rise in entrepreneurship during COVID-19 as a result of jobs being canceled. Entrepreneurship has the power to solve social problems and create new jobs in our economy. And so I think we need to find a way to continue to promote entrepreneurship amongst youth and ride this wave. The next section that I'm going to talk about is the truth and reconciliation section. There were also three main findings in this section. First, young people have a sense of distrust and frustration with the Canadian government on behalf of previous unfulfilled commitments related to reconciliation. Second, young people believe that everyone has a role to play in the reconciliation process, and reconciliation will only happen through the participation and cooperation of every inhabitant of this land. And third, young people are calling on the Canadian government to acknowledge the ongoing impact of colonization and make reconciliation a top priority agenda. One of the things that stood out for me in this section was hearing from youth who lacked an Indigenous education in their school system and curriculum. This was something that I did not learn about in school, and this needs to change. I have so much to learn when it comes to reconciliation, and we have so much to learn as a country. And I believe that Indigenous education in our school system and these types of conversations are important for us to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jake. I know that I speak for absolutely all of us when I say that the work that you have done and the work that has been done by all of the members of the Youth Advisory Group in putting this together is just exceptional. The report is exceptional, and we thank everyone here today for their work. So it's now an opportunity to open the floor up for a discussion between Minister Chagger and our Youth Advisory Group representatives on their experience in working on this report, and to chat about some of the challenges that youth are facing today. The questions can go in either direction. I think it could and should be an open conversation and a good dialogue. Since I have the mic and it kind of is difficult to fumble back and forth, I'll just ask a general question and anybody can answer it. You know, I used to work in marketing, and we used to always talk about the necessity of an elevator pitch or that 3-second delivery. And if you could, you know, sum it up into sort of an elevator pitch, what would you say the sort of thesis of this report is, and what should Canadians take away from it? And that's a question for anybody.
I mean, if I can take the floor and take this one first, if you don't mind. I mean, I think the pitch for me is, I feel like we're often putting the burden on the youth of today to, well, what do you need? What do you want? You're the leader of tomorrow. And while that's true, like Minister Chagger said earlier, we are also the leaders of today. And if you want to hear what we have to say, this is it. Over almost 1,000 people participated in the consultations. Only youth wrote this report. I think this is the best tool that is currently available for the government and for the Canadian population to understand what youth are looking for. And I think the answer is now readily available, and let's look into it and put it in action.
Brilliant. Merci, Alex. I don't want to guide this. This is your project, and I want to hear from you. And I want to pass it back over to Bardish. I'm really set on hearing from you guys and making sure that you've got the floor so that you can clearly articulate to Canadians the findings of this. But over to Bardish.
Thanks, Adam, and merci, Alex. Vos commentaires étaient très bien reçus. You know, it's interesting because I got involved in politics when I was 13 years old, fighting for things that mattered to me. I didn't have a vote, but I did have a voice. And oftentimes there's young people who are involved. So would love to know, what made you put your hand up? What was the experience like? And what would you say to other youth looking to get engaged or involved? Because sometimes I think we're trying to fit in, and I think we're hitting a spot where each individual can be their true authentic self. And it's not about fitting in, but actually developing policies that are inclusive so that every individual can be their true authentic self. So would love to know, why did you put up your hand up? Why did you put your hand up? Because this is just adding to the burden of all you have to do. What have you gained out of it? Also feedback to the government and officials as to what we could do better, because we've never done anything like this. And then how do we, you know, get more people involved, or should they get involved?
I can start, go first. In terms of why I got involved, I really jumped at the opportunity to work with young people from across Canada and have my voice heard in terms of policy. I think that most young people, who are given that opportunity will be really excited by that idea. So it was kind of a no-brainer. It was never a, oh, do I think I should do this? It was always pretty clear to me. I learned so much throughout the process from my fellow advisory report members, from our meetings, from Indigenous elders that joined our conversations. And it was such a great learning opportunity for me to learn about policy, to learn about collaboration, to learn about communication. And there's really a lot that I gained from it. In terms of how to get involved, I think it would be great to create more opportunities like this and find a way to ensure that young people are aware of them. I think in this process, the call went out to organizations themselves to nominate youth. So it would be great, I think, to open it up further to any youth who is interested in putting up their hand, just to ensure that we're getting any Canadian who's interested involved in the process.
Oh, that's brilliant, Jake. I think that's, it's so important that this platform grows. I have a question specifically for Alfred, and I'm just curious if anything surprised you through this process. If any of the respondents or results took you aback, or I think you're a guy that keeps a pretty open mind, so I'd be surprised if you were really, really shocked. But I'd love to hear if you were, what kind of raised your eyebrows.
Great question. Agree with lots of what's been said so far. I'm not sure I was surprised, but I was, in terms of on the youth side, I was, I guess, pleasantly surprised by how open and honest youth were about lack of education when it comes to Indigenous, learning about Indigenous peoples in Canada, and sort of the push to say, we want to learn this. Like, this should be something that every child in Canada should have a better understanding of. So not necessarily surprised, but I guess I was really happy to see that reflected in the insights that were shared. And going back to some of what Jake was pointing about, like, this is something that the federal government has done in partnership with youth, led by youth. And I think for youth who are tuning in and listening to this or reading this report, to ask the questions, what is your local government doing, municipally, provincially? Have they done something like this? Are they paying attention to this? Perhaps you can use this as a way to start a conversation in your community at a municipal or provincial level and at a federal level with your MP. I mean, I'm just ecstatic that we're here and that it's at a point now where youth can actually use this, and policy folks across the country can use this as well to inform programming and decisions that are made in the future. So I'm very happy.
No, we can tell, and we're ecstatic as well, because this really is an informed and informing document, and it's a living and breathing entity as well. And I think groups and documents like this, they need to be interesting, but they need to start conversations too, right? They're never complete in that sense. I think it needs to continually evolve. And if this conversation can continue, I think it's definitely done its job. And here in Milton, I have a youth council that's very active. They provide me with lots of great insights, but they're in that blurb form. They're like reading, it's like Twitter, right? It's just like, do this, do this, do this. And something like this is cohesive and a little bit more formal. So couldn't agree more. Alex, I saw you nodding along a lot, and I thought that maybe there's a possibility that you had a reflection on something that maybe surprised you or took you aback a bit.
No, similar to Albert, I think I was pleasantly surprised to see that my experience, like through the pandemic, the openness of folks through mental health or through like Indigenous education. I think that was amazing that like the youth, the participants are able to be like vulnerable enough to share those thoughts and feelings, especially regarding mental health during the pandemic, which has been hard on everybody. But I think I was really surprised by just, how much it resonated with me and how much the experiences were similar to mine, but also very different to mine. Like for the environment and climate action, we're talking about communities that have only just started implementing recycling programs. So I think we're seeing that like we forget that Canada is such a big country and experiences are so vast, which means that accessibility is still such a concern for so many folks. Because if you're looking at marginalized communities or anybody living outside of urban centers, the reality is vastly different. And I think we often forget about that. So I think it was wonderful to see that while my experience has resonated and was visible in the report for youth all over the country, it was also a stark comparison to see that people are also living things very, very differently from me, and how can we include that in the report to make sure that it's truly representative. So it was really informative to go through all of the quotes and all of the comments, and hopefully the report is representative of that.
Alex, I just want to say thank you for actually representing and bringing up the diversity of youth voices and the diversity of our country. I think oftentimes, the narrative is there of, I don't agree or they don't speak for me, but we want to represent more young people's voices. We want youth to be engaged. And I think that's where this report, as Adam had mentioned, it's an evergreen document. But now we actually have a marker as to where our young people are at, what are young people expecting, and how do we get more people engaged. So I think it's really important to acknowledge our own realities, but also the realities of those around us, what we have in common and what's not the same, and to validate that each individual's experience is theirs and it's okay. And I want to really give a shout out to all youth advisory group members and participants for working with the youth secretariat. We've never had a youth secretariat in Canada, but we do have one now. It's because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was the first full minister of youth, because your voices need to be represented. We have a commitment and are well on way to hit the target of 75% of Crown corporations having at least one young person at the decision-making table, at their board table. And what I've been seeing in my community here in the Waterloo region and surrounding areas is people are saying, should we have a youth member on our advisory board? Yes, you should. Should we be engaging young people? Yes, we should. Where do we find young people? Well, young people are everywhere. So what I would say to everyone listening today, please keep this conversation going. The Prime Minister's Youth Council also has been a key player in the development of this report. So engage with Youth Council members, engage with the Youth Secretariat. Let me and Adam and your elected officials know where we should be messaging and communicating to ensure that more young people can be engaged and involved. And you're getting to hear from 3 of the 13 voices of the Youth Advisory Group, but also Alfred sits on the Prime Minister's Youth Council. And I can say, and Alfred knows, that we have really good conversations and we learn so much. And council members came on to participate in one facet or another, and I think have actually had their horizons broadened. Donc, c'est vraiment un plaisir d'être votre voix au table du cabinet, la voix des jeunes et la diversité des voix de la jeunesse du Canada. S'il vous plaît, continuez à faire partie de la conversation et de nous laisser savoir comment nous pouvons vous representer meilleur, and how we actually build a more consciously inclusive Canada. And with that, before I pass it back to Adam, I hope everyone keeps well and safe. I know it's been a challenging time, but it was young people. When the government was talking about socially distancing, that it was young people who said, no, we need to physically distance. We need to keep 6 feet apart, 2 meters apart, but we can be socially connected. It's young people who bridge the intergenerational gap by using technology. So please, as Alex also alluded to and the Prime Minister says, young people, not only the leaders of tomorrow, you are the leaders of today, and you have a government that wants to work with you and for you. And we're listening and hearing all you have to say. So never hesitate to instigate conversations or plant some ideas so that we actually build the Canada that you are proud of and want to live in. So with that, keep well and safe. Adam, back to you.
Thank you, Minister Chagger, and thank you, Alex and Alfred and Jake, for your reflections today. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This report creates greater awareness of how youth are doing and highlights all of the opportunities and challenges faced by youth in Canada in their own words. I think that's the most important part. Please, you can find the report online. We will share it widely and broadly on social media. Merci encore. Thank you very much for being here today. And thank you especially to all the youth that participated. Merci beaucoup et au revoir.